Thank you for joining us for this episode of Meet the Mesothelioma Experts with Joe Belluck from Belluck Fox. My name is Cheryl Bruner, and I serve on the board of directors for the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation. Today, I will be sitting down with Joe to learn more about Belluck Fox and to address some of the most common questions mesothelioma patients and their families have regarding legal processes. These types of questions fall out of our area of expertise, so we turn to experts in their field to provide you with this resource. Great to see you, Joe. Thank you for taking some time to speak with me today, and thank you for being such a loyal sponsor and friend to the Meso Foundation.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's good to be here with you today.
So before we dive into the legal process questions, I want to get to know a little bit more about Belluck Fox and your work within the Meso community. So tell us, why does Belluck Fox choose to sponsor the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation, and what is it about our mission that resonates with you?
So Belluck Fox is a mesothelioma law firm. It's basically 90% of the cases we handle involve individuals who have mesothelioma. We've been doing this work for a long time, at least 25 years. And one of the best things about our law practice is getting to know our clients and their families. Anybody who has mesothelioma knows what a challenging time and diagnosis it is. It's unfortunately very aggressive disease. And when people learn about the diagnosis and are dealing with their treatments and the progression of the disease, it's a very, very hard time for them and their families. And as their lawyers, we are in a very unique position with our clients because part of what we do as we're taking them through the case is having them talk about what this disease is doing to them and their families. And we know as their lawyers that this becomes a full-time job for them and their caretakers, between medical appointments and follow-up and dealing with the side effects of treatments and managing all their affairs, and emotionally can be very, very devastating to them and their families, dealing with what they know the likely outcome is, even with good treatment and life extension. And, dealing with the change in the quality of life. Many of our clients are the primary provider in their family. They do a lot of the household chores and activities, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman that we're representing. They almost always play a significant role in taking care of their house and their family and providing. So this disease takes a lot of that away from our clients. And because of our role in getting them to talk about this, we become very close to our clients. We're sometimes the only people in their lives that they're really discussing everything they're feeling with, in part because they don't want to burden their family members. They feel guilty. They don't want to upset their partner with what's really going on with them. So, we believe very, very strongly that we need to support research and organizations that will change the course of mesothelioma, and also provide the resources to our clients and caretakers that they need. I've said this before at your conferences and other contexts, but Cure Meso, the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation, is really the only truly independent organization out there that is doing this work. Um, I'm not saying anything that's going to shock anybody who has mesothelioma. If you go online and type in mesothelioma, most of the websites you're going to hit on are legal websites run by law firms. You have hospitals and doctors who are very dedicated to treating people with mesothelioma, but they're not truly independent. They have their own interests at heart sometimes. Um, so even though you're dealing with lawyers who care and doctors who care, the only truly independent vehicle organization out there is Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation. And the quality of the doctors on the board, the quality of the staff, has led us to be a longtime supporter, and not only support directly, but when our clients ask us who they can support, because a lot of our clients want to give back, we suggest giving to MARF Cure Meso because of your independence.
Yes, thank you, Joe. You've described a lot already about what Belluck and Fox does, but are there other things within the meso community that you can tell us about too, of how you're involved?
Sure. I mean, we support research at various hospitals. For example, NYU in New York, we've donated a considerable amount of money towards early detection research and fellows. We've supported University of Maryland and other institutions. We sponsor the International Meso Group Conference. We sponsored the one in France last year, the nurses component, and we're sponsoring the conference in Philadelphia that's going to be coming up. So any way that we can try to help advance treatment, possible cures, interconnectedness, and intersectionality among doctors around the world, around the country, we want to do. We've been very, very blessed to be able to do this legal work and do good work. We do good work for people, but we've been very fortunate to be able to have a successful business, and we feel very strongly that we should be giving back to the mesothelioma community.
Okay, let's get into the legal process questions next then. So, a person has just received a mesothelioma diagnosis. When thinking about the legal process, what should their next steps be?
So I always tell clients when they contact me and are trying to decide whether to pursue legal action, that they should pursue legal action and they should do it quickly. I always say to them, I don't like to be pushy or sound like I'm pushing you to do something. But those of us like Belluck and Fox and myself that have been doing this work for decades, we know from experience that every day that we have to work with our mesothelioma clients, the result is going to be better. It's going to be better because we're going to be able to get information from them. It's going to be better because if we need them to give a statement or a deposition, we're going to be able to get that done. The likelihood that we're going to be able to get their case completed while they're alive increases substantially with the amount of time we have. Nothing good comes from waiting. And I always say to my clients or potential clients, I want you to hire Belluck and Fox, but if you're not going to hire Belluck and Fox, hire somebody quickly. Don't wait. Because time is really of the essence with this. And the sooner we can start working, the sooner we can file the case, the sooner we can file bankruptcy claims, the sooner we can get a statement done, the better the result is going to be for you and your family. So the first thing that someone should do is contact the mesothelioma law firm and get the process started with them. This is an area of practice that you need a firm with experience. You need a firm that specializes in mesothelioma cases and predominantly handles mesothelioma cases, because there's a lot of expertise that mesothelioma law firms have, that's going to make the difference in your case. And then working with that lawyer, initially being available to work with that lawyer or law firm is important. The law firm can do a lot. We try very hard not to burden our clients with getting medical records, getting information, anything to do with court procedures or court filings. But there are some things that we need from our clients and some amount of time we need from them. And being available and responsive to that will really make a difference also. So I would say top things that someone should do: contact a lawyer, hire a lawyer, be available to work with them for the brief amount of time that we're going to need you. And then we can do almost everything else to try to get the best result for you and your family.
Okay, building on those comments about time, first question. After choosing a law firm, what does a typical timeline look like for the client and their family?
So for most cases, the case will be completed within 12 months, 1 year of you contacting us. So we move very, very quickly. If you contacted me today, we would likely have your case filed by the end of the week or the following week. I know that sounds very quick because it's only a few days from the first contact, but we know enough about these cases and the exposures to asbestos and how to proceed that we can get the case filed very, very quickly. The reason we want to do that is it gets your place in line. And the sooner we get started, the sooner we'll be able to conclude. And we're able to adjust things along the way. If we file the lawsuit and need to add parties or need to drop parties, we can do that. So usually right after contact, very quickly, we file the case. We start working on the bankruptcy trust claims, which we can talk about, and also starting to work on the lawsuit, which we do both things in tandem. And typically, the first settlements will come in about 45 to 60 days, and the whole case will be completed within 12 months. So everything we do is very quick, very protective of our clients to make sure we're protecting their legal rights, getting everything done as quickly as possible. One of the reasons why we want to get things done quickly is it gets settlement money and compensation to our clients quicker. Number two, a lot of times our clients are anxious about the steps in the case, like a deposition or giving a statement, and we want to get those things done so it's off their mind. Anybody who's been through this process with my law firm or another law firm and seen a family member go through this, they know the sense of relief that the client has when their testimony is done and they feel like they've done what they have had to do to protect their family, and the rest is in our hands, but they feel like they've completed their part of it. And third of all, again, just speaking very openly and honestly, mesothelioma is aggressive. Our clients can turn very quickly, and their life expectancies, we have to assume, are limited. So we want to get everything possibly done that we can while they're living and while they're healthy enough to help us.
Another question about time. How much time and effort should the patient and their family anticipate that they will need to dedicate to the claim, to litigation?
So in most cases, my advice or guidance to clients about that is you're going to need to meet with me or one of my lawyers for an hour or two initially. You're probably going to need an hour or two to complete some paperwork that we need done. And then the deposition is usually 2 days of time, and the preparation for the deposition is probably another day. So I usually tell people it's like 3 days of time for the deposition and 3 to 4 hours of time meeting with me and filling out some paperwork. The rest of the time commitment is pretty minimal for our clients because we do most of the work on the case, unless the case goes to trial, which is not the typical scenario. But if the case does go to trial, again, most of the cases settle without a trial. But if the case does go to trial and our client and or their family members are available, we like them to be present, and that can be a couple of week process. Obviously, if their health doesn't allow them to be present or there's some other reason why they can't be present, we can do that without them. But it's usually very beneficial to have them present at the trial. But up until that point, again, rare scenario of trial, but up until that point, I would say 4 days of time is what people should sort of think about. And, it's not 4 days sitting in an exam room where you can't get up. It's 4 days of time sort of blocked off with breaks and time for rest and, flexibility and things like that.
All right. So the types of legal action that can be taken are several. So can you talk about the various options for taking legal action and how some might be the least involved to some are the most involved, just so patients can understand the various forms of pursuing justice that are available?
So it's a great question. When I was at the Mesothelioma conference in France last year, I ran into a nurse that works at a mesothelioma center, and she was asking me about some of our clients. And she said, when the clients come in, they're mentioning all these different things, and I don't really know what to say to them. So I've actually printed up this sheet, which if people want to reach out to us at belluckfox.com, we can send to them. But it basically lists 6 or 7 types of compensation programs that people with mesothelioma can benefit from. So the sort of easy ones to mention, which people may not always think about in this way, are things like health insurance, private disability insurance, Social Security disability, workers' compensation. These are all different types of compensation programs that some people with mesothelioma may be able to take advantage of. So if you're still employed, you might be able to apply for workers' compensation benefits. You may be able to apply for disability benefits through your employer. There are Social Security disability benefits that are available. And there's health insurance programs, Medicaid, Medicare, private health insurance, all which can provide potentially some benefits for people with mesothelioma. And then there are sort of the more, I would say, legalistic options. So one of them, I'm just going to mention quickly, which are veterans benefits. Those are for people who were served in the military and have a service connection asbestos exposure. So you were in the Navy, were exposed to asbestos. You may qualify for veterans disability payments, both to you and your family. And we handle those for our clients. And it's a very beneficial thing if you were a veteran and exposed to asbestos and have mesothelioma to pursue. So we handle that as part of what else we do. And then we have the mesothelioma bankruptcy funds. Cheryl, you know this, that a lot of times the first question we get is, isn't there just a big fund that you apply for money to? And the answer is no. There is not one big government fund or one big trust fund. What there are about 40 or 50 individual funds that have been set up by companies that made asbestos products and went into bankruptcy, and as part of their bankruptcy reorganization set up a fund for their product. So there is a Johns Manville Trust Fund and an Owens Corning Trust Fund and 45 other trust funds like that. And more being set up as companies file for bankruptcy. So one of the things that our law firm does is we file claims with every bankruptcy trust fund that our client qualifies for. Not every client qualifies for all 45 or 50. Some qualify for 2 and some qualify for 25. But whatever number they qualify for, we submit those claims. It's not a lawsuit, but you still have to provide proof of the mesothelioma diagnosis, proof of the exposure, and other information. And the amount of money that you get is based on a lot of factors about you, like age and other things, but also who your law firm is, how experienced your law firm is, what state or jurisdiction you were exposed in. So those are the trust funds. And then lastly, and what is really the main thing that we do, is file a lawsuit, an individual lawsuit, not a class action, for our clients against the companies that made asbestos products that they were exposed to. So if the company is not in bankruptcy, but there's still an ongoing business, we sue them in an individual lawsuit on our client's behalf and work those cases up to get settlements for our clients. So just to summarize, the two things we do for every client are the trust fund bankruptcy claims and the individual lawsuit. And then depending on other things, we will file veterans claims, workers' comp claims, and help them with these other types of disability and health insurance claims.
So we talked a few minutes ago that settlements can start to arrive very soon after starting the legal process. Can you build on that and talk about how long generally it takes for the client to receive all the different settlements, or if there is a trial and a verdict, what happens at that time with receiving the money?
Sure. So usually our clients will start receiving actual settlement money in about 60 days. A lot of times those will be from the bankruptcy trust fund claims, which can get processed quicker, or through some settlements involving the lawsuit, which we're able to do quickly. The rest of the money will usually come on a rolling basis over the next 12 months. First of all, just let me say something about the timing of settlements. There is often a trade-off between how quickly a settlement comes and the value of the settlement. The companies that settle the lawsuit quickly want to pay less, in part because they're settling the lawsuit quickly. The bankruptcy claims that we file can get approved very quickly, but if we want to ask for a re-review of the claim to try to increase the payout from the trust fund, that takes time too. So the advice that we usually give to clients is, if you need settlement money now, if you need compensation now to cover medical bills, to cover lost wages, to do things for your family that you want to do, let us know. We'll get that done for you. But it may be a situation where if you don't need that right away, we'll get more for you if we're able to wait a couple of months down the road. So again, typical case, people will start getting money in about 60 days. We have ways of accelerating that. But there are also a lot of circumstances where it's beneficial to wait a little bit. So, we are in close contact with our clients and ask them very directly about their financial circumstances. We tell every client, hey, listen, if you are feeling financial pressure or you just want the compensation now because you want to take a trip while you're feeling good, you want to, do something, just let us know. I had a client recently. He lives in California. He got diagnosed with mesothelioma. Wonderful guy. He was a helicopter mechanic. He texted me yesterday um, a picture of a 1968 Shelby GT 500 convertible. So for people who are watching this who are not car people, this is like the holy grail of Ford cars. It's a very, very expensive, very, very rare car. It has been his childhood dream to own this car. And from the minute he hired me, he said, I want you to get me a settlement because I want to buy a Shelby before I pass away. And this is the only way I'm going to do it. So we got that done. We actually got the case settled without even filing the lawsuit. I reached out to the helicopter manufacturer that he worked on, and we were able to work out a very significant settlement. And I sent him the settlement money a few weeks ago, and yesterday he sent me the picture with the car. And nothing feels better for me than being able to help someone fulfill whatever their wish or desire is. We're not judgmental about what people do with the money we get. If they give it to their grandchildren or save it or donate it to Cure Meso or buy the car of their dreams, that's their choice. And we just want to help them, fulfill what their choice is. So the only other thing I want to say about the timing of the money is with a trial. So trials are different. If you go to trial, the likely scenario is you're going to have a lot of settlements leading up to the trial, and there's only going to be one or two companies left. When we file the lawsuit, we file it against lots of companies, and they each settle individually. So the settlements happen on a rolling basis, and as you approach the trial, you already have a lot of settlement money, but there's usually one or two companies left. For the one or two companies left, it's going to be a long time before you get paid if you go to trial, because you go through the trial, there's a verdict, there's decisions by the judge after the verdict that we call post-verdict motions. Then there are appeals. There can be multiple appeals. So for the verdict at trial, you could be waiting 12 months or an additional 16 or 18 months to get that money, which is one of the factors you consider when you're deciding whether to go to trial. Is it worth waiting that amount of time? It's always the client's choice whether we go to trial or not, and the timing of that is one of the significant considerations.
Okay, so a client receives settlements or jury verdict. How much of the settlement or award will the patient or their family receive? And how much is subtracted for things such as Medicare reimbursement or medical insurance reimbursement?
So that's an excellent question. So first off, in terms of legal fees and expenses, and then we can talk about the medical liens. But our legal fees are typically a third. I've said this before. Some of my colleagues in the legal profession probably don't like me saying it, but you don't need to pay more than a third to get the very best lawyers handling your mesothelioma case. You don't need to pay 40% or more than that to get the very best lawyers. There are enough of us out here, like my firm, that charge a third, that are excellent at what we do and are going to get you top dollar compensation. In terms of fees, so that's the fee, the third. And then there are some expenses that we incur working on your case. And these are things like court filing fees, getting copies of medical records, hiring a court reporter for your deposition. There are very specific costs associated with a client's case. They are usually not that significant compared to the recovery. So in a typical mesothelioma case for us, the expenses are about $25,000. The recoveries are usually $1 million or more. So the 25,000, I'm not saying it's insignificant, it's significant, but in comparison to the recovery, it's not usually very significant. So just to give people an example, it's like a typical mesothelioma case. If the case settled for, say, $3 million, the attorney's fee would be $1 million, and the expenses without a trial would be like 25,000 or 30,000. So the client would end up with just under $2 million of the 3 million. If the case goes to trial, the legal fees are the same as still a third, but the expenses are a lot more because you have to bring in experts and technology and things like that. And again, that's part of the trial conversation. Is it worth going to trial? It's going to cost you this much. There's the risk of not winning. It's going to take this long. And again, it's always the client's choice. No one's forced into doing it. And we go through all that with the client and say, this is our recommendation. What do you want to do? Some clients don't want a trial. It's too emotional for them, too time consuming, too risky. So we don't try those cases. And some clients want a trial, even though we're saying to them, it may not make sense. They want their day in court. They want justice. And we do that too. So again, it's always the client's choice. All right, so let's just talk briefly about liens, which are the other main deduction from lawsuits. So almost everybody we represent because of their age is on Medicare. There are certain rules about when Medicare can collect money and cannot. Usually it has to do with the date of asbestos exposure, whether it's before 1980 or after 1980. So if you served in the Navy in 1970 and have no other asbestos exposure, Medicare is not going to have any lien because your exposure is before 1980. If you were exposed in 1986 and you have Medicare, Medicare is going to have a lien. Reason why Medicare has a lien is that our friends in Congress passed a law that said if you have mesothelioma and Medicare is paying for your treatment and you're filing a lawsuit to get compensation, Medicare and the taxpayer should get paid back for what they spent from the same companies that you're collecting money from. So the idea of this is that the companies that we're suing should also compensate the taxpayer for their payment for the mesothelioma. My law firm and almost every law firm that does this has worked out an agreement with Medicare that the payback amount is about $30,000. So if Medicare spent $200,000 on your surgery and chemotherapy and treatment, they only get $30,000. If they spent $50,000, they only get $30,000. If they spent $1 million, they only get $30,000. So you want to make sure the law firm you go with has that type of agreement with Medicare because it significantly limits the payback to about $30,000. There is the potential that other medical providers like private health insurers and the Veterans Administration are entitled to some type of payback, okay? So we also handle that for our clients. If the Veterans Administration, just like Medicare, is saying, hey, we paid for your medical care, now you're suing companies because they caused your mesothelioma, we should get paid back too. We contact the VA, we find out how much they spent, we negotiate with them a reduced payback and handle that. Same thing for private insurers. If you are still working, have health insurance through your employer or through a spouse or a partner, we negotiate with them to reduce the payback. And the main thing that people should understand, these medical liens, Medicare, veterans, private health insurance, Medicaid, they are not a reason to avoid filing a lawsuit. Absolutely not a reason. The basic principle, the best way to think about it is that you've hired Belluck Fox to be your lawyer. And now these other people who spent money for your mesothelioma are also in effect hiring Belluck Fox to get money back for them. The only difference is they don't pay us a legal fee. We do it for free for them to protect our clients. But we are in effect acting as their lawyers to get their portion back. You don't pay for it. It's additional money we get from the same companies that we're suing on your behalf. We're really just acting as an agent to get the money for these other providers. And in general, it really doesn't impact the recovery that you get. The most important thing is that we stay on top of it so that somewhere down the road, they don't reach out to you and say, hang on, you didn't tell us about this. You now owe us a bunch of money. So we're very proactive about it. We have a person in our office. This is all they do to protect our clients with respect to these different programs.
At the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about acting quickly. So coming back around to that, when you think about, what is the advice for people who are watching, potential future clients, family members of someone who's impacted, what do we say to them when they're in that process of deciding whether to pursue legal action at all?
This may sound a little self-serving because obviously I'm a lawyer who does this, but my strong advice is to pursue something and to do it quickly. I have never had mesothelioma or had a close family member that had mesothelioma, but I've lived through this experience with a lot of people. And the people who have waited till after their loved one has passed away or after their loved one is very sick, or delayed getting started and the settlements don't come until later on, I think end up wishing that they had started the process earlier, in part because we can get a better result, and in part because they can do things like go out and buy a Shelby that they wanted to, or set up something for their grandkids and family and have peace of mind that their family is taken care of. I cannot tell you the number of clients that we've had who, once they get a settlement check or find out about a settlement or their deposition testimony is complete, somehow feel released and able to pass away in a way that they have peace of mind that they've done what they needed to do for their family. The human spirit and mind is incredible. And so many of our clients, as I said, have the role of being a provider or caretaker in their family and a sense of obligation and duty to their family, grandkids, their kids. And they're not doing the legal process for themselves. They're doing it because they want to make sure that their family's not going to have to sell the house, or if they have to go into assisted living or care, their family's not going to have to pay for it, or if there are medical bills, their family's not going to be burdened. And they, literally are hanging on to know that. And I get it. You go to the doctor, you get this diagnosis, it's a total body blow. It comes out of nowhere. People are in a state of shock. And then, they're confronted with a lot of medical decisions and appointments for surgery and chemotherapy and scans and radiology and oncologists and, which treatment to take. And maybe they want to get a second opinion. And, if they're going to have a procedure, they need to get, a cardiac clearance, and they need to, see their primary care doctor. I mean, it's on and on and on. And the last thing they want to think about is, oh my God, I'm taking on another thing with this lawsuit. Let me just wait a little bit, or, my spouse doesn't want to talk about it. It's too upsetting to them. So, we get it. We understand. I mean, it's, but despite all of that, the best legal advice that a lawyer could give you is not to wait. Put this on your priority list, hire somebody. Again, I hope people hire me. We do a great job. But if you're not going to hire me, hire somebody else quickly, and let us get to work. We're very skilled at doing things and trying to stay out of your way, but we can't help you unless we can get started.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with us today. And your support, your firm's support, and dedication to helping mesothelioma patients navigate these issues, navigate these challenging times are very valuable, and we really appreciate it.
Well, we are humbled and honored to be able to give back to this community, and particularly to support Marf and Cure Meso. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
That concludes this episode of Meet the Mesothelioma Experts. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we continue to bring valuable resources and information from experts in their field.